As those of you who've come before know, my stories tend to be, sort of lighthearted, not very serious. They also tend to not be very good, but, you got in for free. I want to give another shout out to Sarah Lynn, our featured speaker tonight. I've been wanting her to come for a long time. I've known Sarah Lynn north of 30 years, since she was a fresh-faced little freshman at Wesleyan. Known her through the Marriott debacle, which I'd forgotten about till tonight. The Kuko's days. We worked briefly together at Kuko's, and I will tell you, the entire wait staff was terrified of her. And then when she and Tina opened IVP, back, was it 91, 92?
92.
Long ago. My best friend and I went in there one night, and they had this really wide selection of beers, and this was way before that was common. It was back in the day when if you went to a restaurant that had Heineken, it was kind of exotic. And so we didn't know what to try, and Sarah Lynn says, try this. And she gives us this beer called Black Mamba, which was a beer made in the Ivory Coast in Africa, which had something other than beer in it. I'm sorry, maybe Black Mambas. Because Kyle and I drank it, and we just had, it was a big bottle, but we each just had one. And we sat there for a while, and Kyle's like, well, you ready to go? And I'm like, well, my legs don't seem to be responding to instructions. And he's like, well, neither am I. So we had to sit there for about an hour till we could walk again. Sorry, I gotta check notes. I made notes because I'm too lazy to actually prepare for this. I'll refer you back to the statement I made earlier about not very good. Sarah Lynn's kind of indirectly responsible for me being involved with Storytellers and being on the board. She had a birthday party a year or two ago out at the Hummingbird. Some of you may have been there. I was really drunk, so if I met you, I wouldn't remember it. But leading up to it, she'd asked people to tell stories about her that knew her from way back. And I reached out to her. I said, I will, but I'm going to be brutally honest. And then she sent a 2-word reply. Bring it. I was like, well, you can't later say you didn't know me. So I went and I brought it. That in itself is a good story. I met Corin there that night, who heard my story, and asked me to come be part of Storytellers. That, however, is not the story I came up here to tell, which I need to get to, because Corin's already going. Anyway, I worked in the restaurant business long ago, back in Ruby Tuesdays, which was a restaurant that it was at the old mall, when the old mall was a thing. And 2 things about food and beverage industry. One, there's a lot of drinking. There is a culture of drinking. In fact, there was one time we had these high school girl working as up front as a hostess, to take people to their seats. And the hostesses were allowed to keep a Coke, up there with them to drink. And I went by and asked the other hostess, give me Tracy's Coke because I'm thirsty. And she said, you don't want to drink that. That's not Coke. I said, well, what it was a glass of vodka with just enough Coke in it to make it Coke colored. And I'm like, kid's 17, what are we doing? But what we were doing, we had a problem with bartenders. And I really wanted to be a bartender. And I begged and begged and begged. I was a good waiter. I made good money, I did a good job, begged and begged and begged to be a bartender because it's kind of higher status. And the manager was like, no, we've got a couple dudes behind the bar. I'm not putting anybody behind the bar that doesn't have boobs because he thought it wouldn't bring the money in. I was like, well, what's plastic surgery running? I mean, I'm willing to do what I got to do because I want to be a bartender. And I finally convinced them to train me as a bartender to be an emergency backup bartender. There never was an emergency. I worked and I waited and I waited and I waited. And one night I was in there on my night off, drunk. And here's another thing about people in the food and beverage industry. It's the only job I can think of where you will voluntarily spend time off at your job. So I'm there and I am toast. And the manager comes up to me and he says, Kevin, dude, I have an emergency. I'm like, well, sorry. He went back to sip my drink. He goes, no, man, I need you to go behind the bar. I was like, do what? He goes, I'm off. I'm drunk. He goes, no, we've had an emergency with the bartender. Apparently the bartender was skimming, stealing, and giving free drinks. And I went, huh, as I blocked with my body all the free drinks that were sitting on my table. He said, that sounds terrible. He goes, I need you to bartend. I was like, I'll do my best. So I staggered up to the bar. I could barely stand up. I get behind the bar, and at one point I was like, I'm just going to take a nap down here on the mat. No, I'm up. I don't have any idea. My library of drinks is gone. You know, and they have the little shot glass you're supposed to use, and I'm like, fuck it. Hey, yeah. Oh, you know, and I'm just pouring liquor. People asked for this special drink we had called a relaxer. I knew it was supposed to be sort of pink, so I just poured liquor in a glass, added a little grenadine, sent it out. Somebody asked for a daiquiri or margarita or whatever, liquor in a glass, send it out. I'm, unable to even figure out how to make change. I'm like, that'll be $8.62, and they hand me a 10. I'm like, tell you what, let's call it $5. So all night long, and then there's a separate section of the bar where the wait staff comes when they have ordered drinks from their tables. I'm not gonna be able to do all of that. So they're backing up and they're bitching at me. Like, our tables aren't getting their drinks, and my customers are getting upset. And I was like, that sounds like a you problem. Do the best I can. So finally, they keep at me enough, and I start pouring drinks for them again. Liquor in a glass. I will say, not one person sent a drink back that night. I will tell you that. So the next day, I come in to actually work my shift, and Richard comes up to me and goes, man, you pretty much fucked up behind the bar last night. And I'm like, well, probably. I thought I did fine, but yeah, I understand if you weren't happy. And he said, well, what I ought to do is fire you. And I said, well, you probably ought to. But what I ought to do is tell the general manager that you pulled somebody who was drunk and you knew to be drunk and put him on the clock and put him behind the bar for 2 hours. And so we just agreed we'd never speak of it again.